In this demonstration, we'll look at the basics of Excel. How to open the program, how to save files, how to create basic data inputs, what's the general layout of the program. So to start with, I'll open the program. In my case, I have an Excel icon down the bottom here, and I just click that. You may need to search for it under the Windows Start menu. By default, Excel opens on this overview page. This allows you to create new workbooks from this top section here, or to open recently created or opened files at the bottom here. For the moment, I'm just going to use the blank workbook. This is the most common option you'll want to use when starting a new project. So I just click on that icon and it creates a new workbook with no data within it. I'll just run through the general overview and layout of the program. Starting at the top here with this green bar, this is what we call the header. This holds basic information about the name of the file, what sort of file it is. Currently our file is called Book 1. This is because we haven't saved the file yet. This is the default name Excel gives any new worksheet and workbook. The next section, starting with File, Home, Insert, etc. across, all the way down to this lower bar here. This is what we call the ribbon toolbar. It's the main way in Excel that you'll access individual tools and functions, formatting options, which you can then apply to your data and your worksheets. By default, it'll always open on the Home tab, where you've got general formatting options. We'll look at these other tabs in a bit. Coming down, we have this more grey area with this large text input. This is what we call the function bar. This is where we can edit individual functions and calculations with more ease than we could in the actual main worksheet. And we'll see how that works later. Coming down even further, we're actually coming to the main heart of Excel, the spreadsheet itself. This is where we have a series of columns, in this case starting with A, going all the way up to ACC on this side. And we have a number of rows, starting with row 1, going all the way down to row 37 and beyond. Now the numbering system in Excel on the y-axis, the row axis, is just numeric. It goes from 1 up to however many rows you happen to be using. On the column naming system, it always starts at A and then goes up to Z. Once you get past Z, it then goes into A, AB, AC, AD, etc. Once you get past AZ, it would then go into BA, BB, BC, etc. until however many columns you happen to be using. Each of these individual cells within Excel therefore has a coordinate. So the one I've currently clicked on happens to be G6. If I was to click over here, this is K10. Now every time I click on a cell, rather than having to read the column they're off, I can just come up to this little drop-down menu item in the top corner here by the function bar, which tells me what the coordinates are. In this case, D5, F4, F10, etc. So that's the basics of our cell system, our worksheet. This is where we'll enter data, enter formulas, and see our results. Now coming down to the bottom of this sheet, you'll see we has a little tab sticking out of it. And this tab is called Sheet 1. This is the default name that Excel gives our worksheet, our first worksheet. Now we can have multiple worksheets within our workbook. Now the workbook is just what Excel calls the whole file, our project. In order to add new worksheets, we have this plus button next to our Sheet 1 tab. We just click that. This creates a new worksheet within our workbook. and we can keep adding new sheets. This allows us to organize our data. So we have different data in different sheets. And each sheet can be referred and referenced from one sheet to another. Now, if we want to remove sheets, that's simple. We just hover over with our mouse and we right click. This brings up a context menu. Within the context menu, we have the option to delete. If we click that, it removes the sheet. Now note, in Excel, the sheet will only be removed automatically without a warning if there's no data in the sheet. If you already have data in the sheet, Excel will prompt you and ask you whether you really want to delete that sheet. We can also rename sheets from down here. Again, right click with our mouse on the tab. We can go to rename. This allows us to then simply type in a new name for the sheet. In this case, instead of sheet 3, I'm going to call it cats 1, 2, 3. Once I'm finished, I can press enter or just click somewhere else on the Excel program. Now there's a quick way to rename your sheets rather than going to the context menu. You can just double click on the label and then you can type in a new label. In this case, I'm going to call it dogs 987. Enter. So this is quickly naming your sheets. This allows you again to organize your data. You might also want to reorder your sheets. Say for instance we want to move our dog sheet in between sheet 1 and sheet 2. Well, how do we do that? The easiest way is to left click and hold the tab and you'll see the cursor has changed and we've got a little arrow that's appeared in the top left corner of the tab. We can now drag, while holding the button down on our mouse, the sheet. And where that arrow is will be where our sheet will go. So if I align it here in the center between sheet 1 and sheet 2 and then release my mouse button, we've now dragged our sheet and moved it. And again, this is all about ordering your data into a sensible order so it makes your life easier. The only other thing left to show on the layout is this small grey bar at the bottom. In my case, it starts with the word ready and goes over to 100% on the right hand side. This is just the status bar. It has some interesting and useful options, the main one being this zoom menu at the bottom here. All you have to do to zoom in is drag your slider bar to the right and to zoom out to the left. Again, if you have lots of data within your worksheet, this is very useful for being able to see vast amounts of it in one go or zooming into individual areas in more detail. There are other ways to zoom in and out of your worksheet at more defined magnification levels, and to do this we press on our percent number in the bottom corner here, and this opens up the zoom menu. As you can see, we currently have it on a custom zoom of 65%, but say we wanted to go to 200% magnification, we can just click on that and say OK. It'll resize our worksheet to 200%. And while we're talking about zooming, there are ways to zoom in and out of your worksheet which can be accessed from the ribbon menu at the top. So if we go to the ribbon menu and we go across to View, click on the View tab, it'll open up the View ribbon menu, and you'll see in the central section here we have 3 options for zooming. Now the first one simply opens up the zoom menu and dialog, a bit like clicking on the percent symbol in the right hand corner here. And from here we can then, as before, change. In this case I'm just going to go 50%. We have a button in the center here that will always rezoom your document back to its default 100% 1-to-1 ratio. And then we have a option here to zoom to selection. So this allows you to zoom into what is currently selected on your sheet. So currently the selection, which is defined by this green boundary around the cell, is selecting cell A1. Now, we might not want to zoom into cell A1, we might want to zoom into a larger section. So to select cells, all we do is we left click with our mouse and drag out. As you can see, our selections area is now increasing. Once we're happy with our selection, in this case from A1 down to J17, we just release our mouse. That area is now selected. We can then say zoom to selection, and it will zoom into just that area. Now I'm just going to zoom back out to 100%, go back to our main ribbon menu, and just unselect everything. Unselection is easy, you just click somewhere else into another cell. And this covers all the main basics of the layout. So now we're just going to move on to looking at basic input of data. Now Excel can have two main types of data inputted. And the first one is what we call text or string. This should be familiar to you from your computer programming courses. And a text or string is any kind of data that is not numeric. In order to enter some data into Excel, we can select a cell, literally by clicking on the cell we want. So I'm just going to choose D3 for the moment. And to enter some text or string, we just start typing. So I'm just going to type dogs and cats are animals. Once I'm happy with it, I can just press enter or click somewhere else on the sheet, and that text string is inputted. The other type of data is numeric data. Now this may be an integer or it may be a decimal number. Again, just to enter some numeric data, all we do is start typing. In this case, I'm just going to type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, press enter. We now have some numeric data, in this case an integer. But I did say we could have decimal data as well. So we can type a decimal in this case I'm just going to go 0.12345, press enter, we have a decimal number. Now you don't have to type the 0 at the beginning of a decimal number, you could just type point and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, press enter, and Excel will interpret that and add the extra 0 at the front. So these are our two main types of data within Excel. So how do we tell which type is which? Well, with the text it's quite obvious in that there are no numbers in that bit of text. However, sometimes it's a little harder to tell them apart. You can sometimes get a situation where you have numbers, as in digits entered, but they're being interpreted as text. By default, Excel doesn't format numbers or your text strings in any way, shape or form by default. So if you're ever unsure, you can just drag the column so you can see the full width of it. And you'll see that the text by default is to the left and all the numeric data is to the right. This is a good indication that we have text here and then these three cells are numeric data. We'll get on to the individual ways of formatting the data, whether it's text, strings, or whether it's numeric data, or some of the more special cases such as dates and times a bit later on. This is a good point to show some other ways of moving around the worksheet. So far, all I've been doing is clicking with my mouse to select cells. And this is fine for most cases. However, there are situations where you might want to add a lot of numeric data in one go. So I'm just going to start down here in D14 and type 12. If I hit enter, Excel will automatically move down to the next cell below the cell I was in before. So I've gone from D14 to D15. I can then type another number like 13. Press enter, 14, 15, 16. This is a very quick way of adding data to a column. Now, if you want to add data to a row in a similar manner, you can do it this way. So I'm just going to select F14. I'm going to type 12 again. Instead of enter, I'm going to press the tab key, and that moves me one cell to the right. I can then type 13, I can then type 14, then type 15, type 16, etc. So enter moves you down one cell, and the tab key moves you across to the right one cell. These are quick ways of entering data. Additional keyboard shortcuts for moving around are your arrow keys, which allow you to go up, to the left, down, to the right, and the slightly more advanced key of Shift plus Tab to go one cell to the left. So the Shift Tab one is slightly special because you can use that to enter data. So if I started entering data here, so 12, Shift Tab, 13, Shift Tab, 14, Shift Tab, 15, Shift Tab, 16, Shift Tab, you can see we can move and enter data in reverse along a row. So this covers basic data entry. What I'd now like to show you is how to enter basic formulae. These are our calculations, the bedrock of our worksheet, the thing we are going to use to take our raw data, manipulate it, interpret it, analyze it, and produce a result. So I'm just going to move from my worksheet here, which is the one aptly named Dogs 987. I'm just going to choose sheet 1, which is our clean sheet because we haven't added any data into it, and start from afresh. Now to set up this demonstration, I'm going to enter some data into my worksheet. I'm going to start by entering some data into cell A1, and I'm just going to put the number 10. I'm then going to add the number 8 into cell B1, and I'm going to add the number 7 into cell C1. That's our raw data. So how do we calculate with this data? Say for instance we want to have a really simple formula. Say we want to add cell A1 with cell B1 with cell C1. Well, in Excel that's simple. We start by typing in an equal sign. An equal sign in Excel is a special character. It means that we are going to be inputting some kind of formula. We can then type in A1. This is referring back to our cell A1. We can then type in some kind of mathematical operator. In this case, I'm going to add a plus symbol. I can then type in B1. So currently we have cell A1 plus B1. We can then add in C1. And once this is complete, we can press enter. This then calculates the formula we've put in. And as you can see, 10 plus 8 plus 7 equals 25. This is working. So this is its most basic operation. Simple mathematical operations from one cell to another. Now if you want to see the formula once it's typed in, you can click on your cell. In this case, the E1 cell, where we type the formula to start with. And you'll see it's now appearing up in our formula bar here. If we click on the formula bar, you'll see we have the advantage of this color system. So cell A1 has been colored blue in the formula, and it's blue in our worksheet. B1 has been colored red in the formula, and it's red in the worksheet. C1 is a slightly off purple color in the formula, and it's the same off color purple in the worksheet. This allows us to visually represent the cells we are using in our formula on the worksheet and in the formula. It's a very useful aid. And you only really get this coloring to its full effect if you're doing your formula in this formula bar. So previously I entered a formula for our E1 cell directly into the cell itself. But we could just come up to the formula bar here and type in the same thing. Now, previously I typed in A1 plus B1, etc. But I don't have to type in the A1, the B1, the C1. An alternative, rather than typing, is then come over to the cell and just click on it. This selects the cell and automatically adds it into the formula. I can do the same with the C. We can end up with the same formula. I press enter. We end up with the same result. So what are the other advantages of using the formula bar over direct typing into the cell? Well, to start with, the only way to edit a formula within a cell once it's already inputted is to double click on the cell and to then manually change. This is fine if you've got very simple small formulae like this. So I've changed the B1 to C1, press enter, it recalculates the formula. But depending on the size of your cell and the size of your formula, it can become incredibly hard to see the entire formula in one go within a small cell. So by using the formula bar at the top here, we can see the whole formula, and this formula could be multiple lines in length across this whole text area, and this is a text area that we can drag up and down depending on the size of our formula. So it just makes life a lot easier if we're using this formula window. So that's basic formula editing, a simple calculation. Now another form of calculation which is used a lot in Excel is something we call composite calculations. So for this example, I'm just going to type out an equation that we want to calculate, but in text form. So I'm going to come down here to my A6 cell, and I'm just going to type in 2 times 3 plus 4 times 5 plus 10. Press enter. Now this is text, so it's not doing any calculations. The actual times symbol I'm using is actually an X, so it wouldn't work anyway. But this is the calculation we want to calculate. So how do we do it? Well, we could try adding all our individual cells. So 2 in one cell, 3 in the next, 4, 5, and 10. So we're breaking the calculation down. In our result cell, and I'm just going to choose H9 for this, we can do equals, and we could start typing A9 for 2, times. Now times is the asterisk, B9, which is our 3, plus 4 times 5 plus 10, which is our E9 cell. If we press enter, it'll calculate the value for us. Now this is correctly calculated because it's working off the BODMAS principle. So it's looking at this formula and it's doing the multiplications first, then it's doing the addition. This is fine on a simple formula. However, we may have more complex formulas. So this is where the composite formula idea comes in. This is where we break down our individual calculations into individual bits. So for this, in this new example, I'm going to use the same numbers, but in our H11 cell now, I'm going to do 2 times my 3, gives me my 6, and then going to do my 4 times 5, give me my 20. I'm not going to do anything with the 10 because it's a simple number, but I can then rewrite our formula over here in a less complicated way, i.e. with less individual components and with components that have been pre-calculated. So here we just want to do the addition now. So this would be our 6 plus our 20 plus our 10, again, gives us our 36. Now this is one way of doing a composite formula. Another way of doing large, complicated formulae is to use brackets. So if I take our original equation, which does work, but to make it more formal and to make sure there aren't any issues with it, if I retype that in a slightly different way, but use brackets, so here we open a bracket, we do our times of our two values, we then do our plus, we then do our timesing again of our 4 and our 5, we close our brackets, we can then add on 10. Again, we get the same value, but this time we know for certain that it is following the BODMAS principles. Now, most of the time, this isn't an issue, but it's when you get to formulae that are over multiple lines and they may have inputs of over 40 or 50 individual variables. Getting this individual bracketing correct is essential to get a result that's correct. So just be aware that you can use a mixture of brackets, you can rely on the BODMAS principles on small, simple calculations, or you can do this sort of composite, breaking down the equations into individual elements and then bringing it all together at the end. A mixture of these techniques will allow you to do any calculation you want within Excel. So far, I've demonstrated how you can see the formulae by clicking on an individual cell and it appearing up in the formulae bar. There are times when you want to see all the formulae within your worksheet at the same time. And there is an option to do this. To toggle this on and off, we go up to our ribbon bar, we go to our Formulas tab, click on it, and then we go to the Show Formulas option over here. It does have a shortcut, which is Control and the little sort of dash mark. If we just click on that, you'll see that it changes our worksheet and it shows all the formulae in their individual cells in one go. This can be a useful thing in certain situations. Just be aware that this exists. And similarly, to go back, you just click on that again, it goes back to its normal default worksheet working environment. So the final thing I want to show you in this demonstration, now we have basic input of data, some basic calculations working, results coming out, is how to save our Excel file. Because currently this is still an unsaved file, which means that the file data could be lost if our computer either loses power or your laptop battery dies, it gets corrupted, etc. Now to save the file in Excel, this is simple. It's like a Word program. We just go up to our file on our ribbon menu, click on that. This brings up the overview page we started with at the beginning of this demonstration. Now we're not interested in any of the options on this page. What we're interested in are these options down on the left hand side here. In particular, the Save option and the Save As option. Now the Save option allows you to save your worksheet. Now this could be a new unsaved worksheet, or it could be a worksheet that you've previously saved and you want to just update its information. The Save As function is when you want to save a new version of the file or a copy of the file with a new name. So if you've got an unsaved file, it makes no difference which one of these you click. I'm just going to click Save. But as you can see, it defaults to Save As. This is because we haven't saved it before. Now under this new menu, by default, it'll always show the most recent folders you've accessed. And you can scroll up and down to find those folders. If your folder is there and the one you want is there, you can select it. If you have your cloud storage set up on your computer, your OneDrive for instance, you may see your OneDrive appearing. Again, you can click on that, and that's a quick link to allow you access to all your OneDrive folders and files. However, there are times when you want to save it to a specific location that you can't find quickly from those options. In which case, come down to the bottom here where it says Browse, click on that, And this brings up the general and generic Windows file manager and folder finder. Normally by default it'll open on your documents folder, and you could save your file under there if you wanted to, or you could choose another drive. I'm just going to choose drive D, and I'm just going to save it directly into drive D. So to name the file, I'll just come down here where it says file name. By default it'll be book 1 or book N, depending on how many new sheets you've opened up, and it will have the .xlsx extension or format. This is the default Excel workbook format, and it's what you should be saving in most of the time. There are older Excel workbook formats which you may come across, and these are the .xls formats. These are for old versions of Excel going back to 1997 to 2003, so you can open these files, but I wouldn't recommend saving your file in that format because you will lose some of the functionality that you get in the modern format. So when saving normally, make sure you're in the Excel workbook format. Just while we're here, I'll just point out that you can save it in some more generic, sort of low-level files formats. So the .csv file format, which you should be familiar with from your programming courses, you can save your data in that format. You can also save as a PDF. Now this is good if you want to just show your data to someone else, but you don't want them to be able to manipulate it. So you can save it as a PDF, and for instance email it to them. That works very well. But for the moment, I'll just go back to the Excel workbook, and I'll name it something. In this case, I'm just going to call it cats underscore and underscore dogs underscore example. I'm in my D drive, and I just say save. Now this takes us straight back, once it's saved successfully, to the cats and dogs example we had before, with our various tabs, our sheet of formula example. The only thing that's changed is at the top here, on our ribbon bar, or above the ribbon bar, I should say, in the header, it's now called cats and dogs example, rather than workbook 1. And it says that it's saved. So you can be sure that the data you have is now on your hard drive.